Hi there. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pete Caldwell. I'm the General Manager of the Marlborough Chamber of Commerce. And I'm joined here today by Michelle Martin, who's the Regional Labour Market Manager from MSD. Thanks for joining me, Michelle.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate it.
And what we're here to talk about today, we've no idea how many people will join us, but we just want to make sure that there's the right information out there for both members and non-members who are in the business community across Marlborough so that they understand what support from the government's out there. So the two main areas we want to cover, Michelle, are the wage subsidy programme and then also the resurgence support scheme. So just to get things started, and as we said, we'll maybe get joined by other people. So we're sitting here on the Friday the 20th of August at 2 o'clock, pre the announcement that we'll get later on. We've got 10 people watching now, which is good. So hopefully we'll be joined by a few more. So I think the first place to start really, Michelle, is can you just explain the theory behind the kind of wage subsidy and just what people can do from today?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. I think the biggest thing to mention about the wage subsidy is its intent is to have your employees stay connected with you and to help you to do that. So it is a wage subsidy specifically to cover partial wages as best they can. And it's at the moment, it is live. It went live at 9 a.m. this morning. Because Auckland and our East Coast region were put into level 4, it's live for everybody because there could be impact. I won't go too much further into the details. I'm sure there'll be some questions, but overall, the main thing we want to do is try and keep those employees attached to you as the employer.
Okay, so as you said, people can apply for it now and have been able to since 9 o'clock this morning. But is there a bit of a risk that if they apply thinking that they'll get the 40% decline in business and then that doesn't happen, they do need to pay it back? So what's your advice on that?
In that situation, the best advice we can give is to be working with those people around you who support your business to make those assessments to the best of your ability. Where you feel, as at the information you have right now, that you would qualify, you can go ahead and apply. If it does turn out that you weren't eligible for one of the reasons in the eligibility criteria, there is a way in which you can pay that money back. You can even volunteer to pay that money back. There's a process. So if at any point you go, oops, this has changed, we can go online and immediately say, I didn't need that payment.
Yeah. Okay, so I had a few chats this morning with particularly hospitality businesses who were sitting there going, well, I know I'm definitely going to miss it because unless it goes back to level 1 or 2, I won't be open for the 14 days. And I think we should just clarify those 14 days are from the 17th of August through to the 31st. So the basic premise is look at that period of time, see what you think those sales are going to be. And if they are going to be more than 40% decline compared to any 2-week period of the previous 6 weeks, then that you would qualify. And the other thing that I understand is you can also compare it to how you were going the same period of time in 2019, i.e. pre-COVID.
Yes, in particular, if there was something really different in that way, and in particular, if you're not a new employer, but back in 2020 to compare it a year ago, if you were impacted then, it's a harder comparison. I compare that to a little bit like the position we had to take when there'd been the Nelson fires in 2019. Yep. And so people's income had been down, so the comparison didn't quite work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So if you're one of those hospitality businesses, then it's highly likely you're going to qualify. So realistically, it would be sensible to get on it and get that application in. But if you're a different sort of business where you just aren't sure whether it's going to be 10%, 20%, or whether you might be okay, then holding fire for a wee bit longer would be the sensible advice.
I do recommend that. And in particular, the wage subsidy payment that would be made to you is for a 2-week period. It's not a case of if you don't apply till next week, that period is shorter, you will still get your 2-week payment.
And so then obviously the next question that someone might ask is, what happens after that 2 weeks? Presumably that depends entirely what happens at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Absolutely. Yes. At this stage, the settings we understand for the wage subsidy that Minister Robertson announced was around the country or parts of our country being in level 3 or 4.
Right. Okay, so we've just got a question that's come through on the breakdown of full-time and part-time employees. So to just clarify that, if I start off and you can correct me if I'm wrong, for people who are working over 20 hours, they're classed as full-time. You'd be claiming $600 per person per week for those. And for people who are under 20 hours, i.e. part-time, you'd be claiming $359 per person. Is that the right basic sums?
That is the correct basic sums. I'm just scrolling through my screen at the moment to check that full-time over 20 hours, but it's not immediately on my screen. So continue on to the next one. And if that wasn't correct, I'll have a correction for you in a moment.
Okay, so one of the questions that I was asked this morning was, well, hold on, what if I pay more than $600 a week to those members of staff? And this is, I guess, a clarification that we need, which is that the wage subsidy is not designed to pay everybody's wages. It's designed, as you said earlier on, to maintain businesses and allow people to retain their staff through these difficult times so that they can come out of it and they can hit the ground running. And frankly, so those staff obviously can survive through the period too.
Absolutely. Yep, that is correct. Now, in terms of what happens if you're paying less or more than the subsidy amount,
Yep.
The information that's contained throughout the declaration and the other sort of pieces is if you're paying someone less than the amount you receive for them as they're part of their standard obligations, then you would only pay them the amount you would normally be paying them.
Yep.
That remaining money you could put towards another employee where you're not able to meet their full wages. So, for example, I'll just pull some figures out of the air.
Yeah.
Let's say one employee is getting $200 a week and another is getting $800 a week. Then you use the part-time subsidy for that $200 person, and the remaining, quick maths in my head, of approximately $159 could go towards that full-time employee because you will have only received $600 for them.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of looking at that, I guess the next question somebody might ask was, well, what if I had two people who were under the level, i.e. they were getting $200 a week, but I claimed 359 times 2. What happens to that balance of the $159 plus $159? What's the situation there?
So where they're the only two employees for the particular business? At this stage, it hasn't been 100% clear on that. It's one of the questions we have asked. So one of the answers was there is no repayment for that generally. And I think that's considered for the wider business cases. Where it was quite clear, you've claimed money and there's no wages to put it towards, that is likely where we would work with you to say, what are the overs and unders? But what I'd like to do is come back to you so you can share with your members once I get the final answer on that.
Perfect. Thanks for that. That makes a difference. And one of the other questions we've been asked is this a job for the accountant or is this a job that a business owner can do? Now, my advice on that really is that for small businesses, there's quite a lot of business owners who would make this application quite happily. The level of information, as we understand it, is not, it's not anything they haven't already got, that they're not already providing for IRD. So it should be relatively simple, but the more complex the business goes, or if you're not quite so confident in terms of doing those things yourselves, then that would be the time to use an accountant or an advisor to do that.
Absolutely agree with your assessment there. The wording in the declaration is that the person completing the declaration has the authority to make this declaration. So that's just to protect that we don't, have people doing it on behalf and not understanding. So as long as the accountant is authorised to do it on your behalf, that's perfect. And I'm just going to pick something up that you said there around inland revenue. Just want to say one of the things that makes processing these payments a lot faster is when the information you submit in your application is a direct match to the information inland revenue would have. So, for example, if you have a staff member you usually call Sunny, but that's their nickname, we really appreciate if you use their full name as per the inland revenue information when you do payroll, etc.
And it's that, as I understand it, that will make the process speedier. and potentially for some of the relatively simple ones should make it quite quick.
Absolutely, and I can confirm we have got a lot of people working on this to make sure it's going as quickly as possible.
And so in terms of payments then, and I know it's how long is a piece of string, but are we thinking that payments are going to go through in the middle of next week or the end of next week? How quickly do we think those might happen?
We're endeavouring to do them all within 3 days. That is always the best endeavour. Yep. So certainly it's not inconceivable that somebody applied today and could get payment quite quickly. It will be in the matter of how many come in and how quickly we process them. But the endeavour is 3 days, and that's what we're operating against.
Great. And we just got a comment from Brian there, who's filled his in this morning and completed it and said it was a pretty simple process to go through. So hopefully more and more people can get that done, which at least takes away one of the concerns that they've got at this moment in time. And obviously that makes things a lot easier for people.
Can I also throw out, just when we're talking about making things easier for people, where an employer has more than 80 employees, we do have a process to make it a little bit easier for them using a spreadsheet rather than having to do all of those people online. So just to let anyone know, talk to us if you want access for that or can't find it. And just while I'm still speaking, I will just confirm that full-time employees are 20 hours or more and part-time are less than 20 hours.
Okay, so I think we always intended this to be a relatively quick session. I think that probably covers the wage subsidy. And if we get any further questions, we'll do another one of these sessions if we need to just clarify that. But in terms of support, any businesses can get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and get in touch with me, but I think they can also come through to MSD. So who are the best people or the best process in terms of connecting with someone at MSD?
So the best process for connecting with someone at MSD is, first of all, to complete the application online to get that in the system. In the next, I would say 40 minutes, we'll be releasing some information on dedicated phone numbers of a couple of team members who are ready to take phone calls. And we'll also have a process to work alongside yourselves, Pete, to have a bit of a quick FAQ through to the team so that we can scurry around, get that answer, get it back to you, and you can get it back to the people you're working with as well. So I won't read them out right now for everybody, but certainly we'll be making them available, and you can make them available to your people as well.
Thank you. So just to reiterate it, we've covered it's about 14 days from the 17th to the 31st in terms of the revenue decline. You look at that, what you think it's going to be. If it's going to be over 40% against any 2 weeks taken from the previous 6 weeks to that, then you're eligible. The basic eligibility is there. You then get online, input the number of staff that you've got, put all the IRD, the same as you've got on their IRD, and then the process to either get a yay or a nay and potentially to get payment should be pretty quick.
That is absolutely correct. And if I could leave one lasting thing, actually two, can never do one. One would be, yes, for us to process it as quickly as possible, the more information that matches IRD or the more full and complete information, the better. And then secondly, I encourage everyone to take the time to read the declaration that goes alongside this wage subsidy. From what I'm told of those who have used it, and perhaps Brian can let us know, reading the declaration might take longer than completing the actual online form. So take the time to read that declaration and make sure that it's all there. And that's the kind of thing where if you're reading that and thinking, oh, that statement says XYZ, oh, I'm not sure, that's what we're here for. The bit we can't assist with is determining whether you've had a reduction in revenue. That has to be something that you need to determine for your business, but other types of queries or how you apply that ratio, feel free to ask.
Okay, great. And again, Nikki's just commented a few minutes ago, just to say that she's completed hers this morning, and it's a really super simple process. So let's move on to the Resurgence support payment. And part of the discussion you and I had earlier on today was, can you claim for the two at the same time, or were they mutually exclusive? And the answer to that is yes, you can claim for both of these.
Yes, on the only reference that we have found to that as the dedicated reference, it isn't on the resurgence payment information or the wage payment information itself, but it is held on the COVID-19 website, stating that if you meet eligibility for both, that you can apply there for both.
Yeah. And so to just clarify what this is about covering, as we said, the wage subsidy is about trying to retain staff and make sure you can come out of this in a better position as a business. And looking after those staff. The resurgence support payment is for looking after the business owners. So this is about covering some of the one-off costs that are caused by COVID. It's not intended to cover all of them because that's impossible, but it is intended to cover some of those. Is that the right basic premise for it?
Yeah, that is definitely the right basic premise for it. It is an Inland Revenue product, so I'm doing my best to capture all the information as it comes through. There's a really great resurgence support payment calculator on their website, as well as their eligibility criteria. So encourage people to use that calculator. Really good. I've had a wee look at it myself.
Yeah, and I had a look at that too, and it is, as you say, pretty simple. So that again with this one, slightly different criteria in that this is a 30% decline rather than a 40% decline, and this allows you to claim one of two amounts, and it's the lesser of the two amounts. And as I understand it, and we can clarify this if we're not entirely sure, this is the same 2 week taken over the same 2 week period of time.
I haven't seen that it isn't, but we will seek to confirm that categorically.
Okay. And so basically there is a payment that you can claim that is either, and it's, as I say, it's the lower of these two, is either $1,500 plus $400 for every full-time equivalent person you have working in the business, or it's the quarter of the decline that you experience. And the other thing we should say about this is this doesn't open for applications till next Tuesday. So that opens on the 24th. And won't be there then. And we will have more information to send out to our members between now and then, because I think we'll get a bit more clarification on this. But this sounds like, again, it is going to be relevant to a pretty wide range of businesses, and will, help them out at this time.
I think that's a really great summary, and certainly our teams working in the FAQ space are doing their best to stay across this as well. But certainly we're linking with Inland Revenue to get further information. So happy to support in that way.
Okay, great. And we've just got a comment on the text here from Nikki, just saying that she can say that MSD and IRD have been extremely helpful. And resurgence that they thought they qualified for, but then had it and broke it down, and it didn't on that particular instance. So I guess that's the key thing, is be transparent, ask for the right advice, and then the process will help you. And one of the other comments that Nikki's just made, which I think is really relevant going forwards, is the key thing is to keep records as you go through, so that you can show at a later stage, if you need to, how the decline happened, what the decline was, so that you're really clear about that.
Absolutely, and that is covered in the declaration for the wage subsidy as well. The other thing, and I would encourage people to do, is if you're sort of doing your own workings and trying to, this is how I've worked out that I'm going to be at this point, don't just keep the physical evidence of what those numbers were, keep your workings as well. That might sound a little bit like I'm telling you how to do something you'd naturally do, but just in case, it can be quite easy to scribble on a piece of paper and throw it out, and then a couple of weeks later you're trying to revisit, why did I think that? So just a little wee tip there from me.
Okay, so just before we go on to the last two, which is the short-term absence payment and the leave support scheme, which we'll cover pretty briefly, I think, because we said we'd keep this to about 20-25 minutes, so we're getting close to that. I will just put out there, if anyone else who's on the live stream's got any questions, please flick them through now, and if you get anything afterwards, send them through and we'll make sure you get the answers. So just in terms of these two, these are about being able to claim when a staff member can't come to work because they've got to go and have a test, or a staff member can't be at work because they've got to self-isolate. So these are just, I think we'll get into these over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Are these schemes open already, Michelle, or are they about to be opened up?
No, these ones have been enduring, so they've been available throughout this process. So I think the key thing to remember with both of those payments is that they are with a health lens. So there can be a little bit of confusion that at the moment we're all technically self-isolating, right? We're all at home inside. And these particular two products, one is with regard to a person who's had to have a test and therefore can't come back to work until it's negative. The second one is where a person has been informed by a health authority they must self-isolate, potentially because they've been at a place of location or they've got a link to a live case, but it's around health criteria. It isn't for those of us who are home under the alert level changes.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, hopefully we've covered everything we needed to. As everybody who's on the live stream will see, there's a webinar with Grant Robertson that's starting at 4 o'clock. Obviously, we've got the update at 3 o'clock coming up. And I think it's fair to say, Michelle, that hopefully we've covered the basics for people. If they've got more questions, they can come through to us. And if we need to do one of these again, we'll do one of these again.
100%. This is my first. I'll take all feedback too. So if we can do it better next time, we're here for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And hope you get what you need to get from those applications. Take care. Thanks, Michelle.